Good evening, Sea Alaska shareholders. Thank you for joining us tonight. We'll give about a minute just for people to come on in and settle in. In the meantime, in the comments, if you could please let us know you're here and watching and where you are watching from. We're curious to know. All right. Thank you again for joining us here for our second podcast. I'm Shaymata, your host for this live stream. I'm a Sea Alaska shareholder and I volunteered to serve on our Facebook group's podcast subcommittee. Today, our guest is Monico Ortiz, an independent candidate for the Sea Alaska Board of Directors. Hi, Monico.
Hello.
Candidates have an opening and closing statement and will answer our questions on Sea Alaska financial performances, the difference among the candidates, election reform, and whether the candidate thinks Sea Alaska is headed in the right direction. We also invite shareholders to post a question during the live stream in the comments section, which will be answered at the end. All right, let's go ahead and get started here. So to begin, we are going to have an opening statement. So if you could tell us a little bit about yourself and why you are running for the board in about 2 minutes or less.
Thank you, Shay. Monico Ortiz, Aya Aksai, Thomas J. Hansen, Yudasakin Akli, Chak Nak Wasatian Akli, Kuhandek Wasatian, Seattle, Washington, Yehet Kutsati. Hello, shareholders. My name is Monico Ortiz. I am the grandson of Thomas J. Hansen, who was Tlingit from an Eagle clan. He was an orphan. He was born in Ketchikan and raised in a Sitka boarding school. There are two reasons, two main focuses I have as I run for the board of directors. Number one, I want to see our profits increase, particularly in the service area. That's the environmental, scientific, technology, and construction services. There are untapped potentials, I believe, that we can do better in those areas. The second area that I really want to focus on is shareholder hiring. I really want to see shareholders in high-paying jobs and get more of them in there. My background is electrical engineer. I've been working for many years. I know the service area very well. So thank you. Gunshish Hawa.
Thank you, Monico. Okay, now for our second financial performance. From our previous podcast, Bleeding Red Ink, we have a graphic that summarizes Sea Alaska's financial performance for the last 23 years. What do these numbers mean to you, and what do you think explains them? And we'll give you a second at the graph here.
Yes, thank you, Shay. So when I look at this, I right away see the way Sea Alaska breaks down. There's investments, which are basically stocks, the majority fund. And I will point out that this 2022 annual report that just came out, they lost $14 million. That's what stands out. Now, they talk about having the stock market being down, which it was, but there were many companies, many that actually made money. So this is also an area where Sea Alaska is not actively involved. They have their consultants, or my understanding, at least from reports. The next one, I would say the 7i. 7i is actually the revenue sharing with other corporations. It's for the natural resources. Now this is something that Sealaska is not as heavily involved in terms of having any control over, because they no longer log. If you looked at the April distribution, if you had B and C shares, 84% of the money that came through per share was basically 7i. Again, Sealaska doesn't really have an active role right now since they're not contributing. The last one is the operations, which is the foods and also services. I mentioned the services. In the service area is, again, an area that I believe that Sealaska has the most control over. The foods, I see that almost more as an investment, because they're invested in different companies and they have a stake in those companies. That actually lost $4 million this past annual report. And so I have concerns about the way Sealaska is going about. If you could show the next slide, please. If you looked at this graph that was presented in the previous episode, you could see that in 2015, things were starting to rise. 2016, there was quite a bit for both the foods and services. But you could see the downward trend now that's happening. I believe the operations includes both foods and the services, and also the investment income, which I mentioned, was a loss. The 7i revenue was quite a bit, but again, they don't have as much control over. So again, looking at the graphs, you can see from the previous years how erratic it was, but we are now looking at a downward spiral, and that has me concerned.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Moving on, what differentiates you from the other candidates? Could you tell us about your background in terms of education and experience to serve as a Sealaska board member?
Yeah, thank you, Shay, again for that. Basically, my background is engineering. I've worked for a variety of companies, for-profit companies, doing design, but the goal was to make money. So I have both the business side and a technical side that, if you look at many of the current companies, especially ones such as Amazon, they're very much invested in technology. I don't believe I've ever seen another board member possess those kind of skills. That is, I believe that in the modern business world that we have in a lot of the successful companies, they're going to utilize technology. So I actually design technology. I'm able to evaluate whether it's marketable. I'm a problem solver. I will approach it that way. I, again, have that for-profit background. So that would be what I could bring to the boardroom to keep Sealaska focused.
Thank you. That was great. Okay, now for the next question. Election reform. What does election reform mean to you? And what, if anything, do you want to do about election reform?
Yes, thank you. Discretionary voting. My understanding is it's here to stay. I know that it's been mentioned that it's been on the ballot for many years. I would like to really look at that, and it in my opinion, it needs to be discussed in the boardroom. I want to see that there's a level, push for a level playing field and to be transparent. I am happy in the boardroom to give a first or second motion to stop the use of discretionary voting. I, for one, won't accept discretionary votes. I would like to point out that I have never accepted discretionary votes. My main concern with discretionary votes is that I wouldn't want board members to stop being a voice for shareholders because they're worried about whether the rest of the board would vote for them to give them discretionary votes if they ran again for additional terms. The other thing I would say is term limits. I don't think this should be a forever job. I believe if you can accomplish your goals in 1 to 3 terms, then you should basically step aside and let someone else serve.
Thank you so much. Okay, moving on. What are your views about the direction Sealaska is heading?
Yes, thank you for that question too. I really am concerned about Sealaska, that they're not focused enough on the business end. They are a corporation, and as a corporation, they need to be looking at profits. With that being said, they are unique that they're serving our native shareholders. I support language programs. I support scholarships. I support career development. All of these, we can still maintain our core values, but that all comes from the profits. Uh, CA Alaska is a for-profit company, and I feel they need to get back that focus.
Great. Thank you so much. Okay, and now for the closing statement. Is there anything else you want shareholders to know about and why they should vote for you?
Yes. I'm ready to serve, to be a voice for shareholders. As a board member, I will keep the CEO and management accountable to improve our businesses and get more shareholders employed in high-paying jobs. I want to make Sea Alaska something our ancestors would have been proud of, uh, somewhere that our young people are proud to be a part of. I want to hear from shareholders, their thoughts, ideas, concerns. Um, Feel free to reach out to me. My number is listed. You can call or text. Again, I want to be available. I really want to listen and hear from shareholders to represent you.
Okay, thank you so much, Monica, for your responses. We'll now be taking questions from our viewers, and we'll wait a minute or two for some shareholders to post some questions. Okay, we have our first one here from Clarice Johnson. What more could Sea Alaska do to improve shareholder hire?
Thank you, Clarice, for that. I believe that, for one, they need to be growing their businesses so they're creating the jobs. But the other thing is, I think that they need to encourage, look at those jobs and look at the education to help give guidance, particularly for students as they look um, for their education goals. And I'm not saying for university, but even skill sets, trades. I think that some shareholders, I knew when I was going through school, I wasn't exactly clear where. You can't just tell them, oh, go look at the website. I think there needs to be more. They have the career development. I actually like that. It's a program that they've rolled out. I believe that it can be more tied into the scholarships. I also believe that you get more. We have many shareholders that are very successful, and get more of them to want to contribute and listen to them to basically help give that guidance. I actually serve as a SHI STEAM mentor, and really glad to be part of that program because the program is really focused on trying to show our youth basically the fields. And so I think that would actually encourage not only you have to have the jobs and you have to be growing the company, but you also have to be tying that in directly so that the shareholders can see that and that they'd be interested and know that you care. Again, we're unique. We're actually a native owned corporation. So you really need to tie those in.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Okay, we have another question here from Brad Fletch. Please comment on landless.
Yeah, thanks, Brad, for that. I support the landless. I believe that I'm glad that Sea Alaska has invested in promoting and trying to get that through. I'm glad to see what the discussions are happening in Alaska, but it's something that needs to be passed through Congress. So you're going to have to get the other 49 states involved. I know there's been struggle in Washington to get the senator. I live in Washington, and I believe that the strategy, and I've shared this before with some of the board members, is to get to collaborate, to partner, probably partner with the tribes, partner with other organizations in Washington State. There are 7,100 Klickenhaida tribal citizens in Washington State. We'd be the third largest tribe. you have some political power. That's what you need to start doing. You need to start working and following up. I know that there's struggles. I do believe the team has been working, but I think that, again, knowing that it's got to pass through Congress, you've got to really partner and work with other organizations.
That was great. Thank you. Okay, we have another question. Shareholder hire should be a top priority in management development of current shareholder employees. What field should college students major in?
Yeah, that's a great question from that user. I think, again, I don't think everybody needs to be an engineer. I think there are lots of jobs that are created. I mean, that's, again, why you have Google, Facebook, Amazon. You have these companies. But see, those, so technical fields, engineering, there's a variety of engineering, the computer sciences, IT, you're always going to need all of those. But you can also have, there's going to be HR, there's going to be communications. I know the sciences there in terms of ocean health, which I'm all for. I think you have to look at how you're going to make profit. But those science, fields, there's a variety. I think also business, of course, being able to have leaders, project managers. There's a variety, so you can kind of find your niche. Again, am technical, but I do believe there's other areas that would help. If they're looking at windmills, they're going to have hardware designs, but they're also going to have to understand the oceans, and they're also going to have, again, project leads and business people that are going to be looking at that and crunching the numbers. So.
Great, thank you. Okay, so we have another question here from our chat. Sealaska pulled out of the villages and took jobs and business spending. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I got to visit Prince of Wales last summer, and I'm actually going this coming week. I believe that Sealaska, I wish they had looked at and tried to build infrastructure when they were logging and look at, the future of that. There are limitations sometimes with like the internet, but those problems will be addressed. Actually, you have Amazon's Kuiper program or Starlink, and that will be able to distribute the internet. I think the pandemic taught us that you can work remotely. So you can have people that are in those areas and you can tie it in. Again, Sealaska already has subsidiaries that a lot of them do work remote. And so I believe, it's going to take time, but we need to build that infrastructure. And again, you start building those types of jobs, then you can also, there was a question I had about housing. We would want our people to be like, if you got those jobs and you needed housing, you'd want our people to be able to be doing those jobs and developing those skills. Again, it takes time, and I wish it had started earlier, but I believe that you can actually still do it. I think you have to go about it in a very, with a good plan, and you also have to get people, just to show them that you care and that actually you're going to follow through, not just say you're going to do something. And that's something that I will definitely be looking at. I'm going to go to, back to the villages, and I'm going to ask them too, to try to understand. Again, I've seen some of it, but I, will continue to work with shareholders to try to address these issues.
Thank you so much for that response. Next question is from Clarice Johnson. What concerns are you hearing from shareholders when you attend meetings?
That's a good question, Clarice. I've heard them concerned about Sealaska's future, saying where the direction. I've heard shareholders feel like they're too focused on the cultural aspects and not enough. I've heard some that were, happy with certain areas. I've heard ones that, the job, when I've shared my vision on the jobs, they've told me that they are concerned about that. They're concerned for their young people, their sons and daughters, their nephews, nieces, their grandchildren. there's elders that have been concerned about the direction that Sealaska's been going. They've been waiting for years, or they're concerned about whether the land list will ever be completed in their lifetime. So I've heard a variety of concerns, and I've been listening to them and trying to listen as much as I can.
Thank you for that. Those are all concerns that I've been hearing as well. For our next question, how are other positions you hold beneficial to Sealaska, such as Tlingit and Haida, and your term on the Sealaska Participation Committee?
Yes, thank you. Yes, I did serve on Sealaska's SPC, Sealaska Participation Committee, as the chair for Outside of Alaska. It was a new program that rolled out in 2019. The direction that they gave us was to engage with shareholders and that we could advise Sealaska on the issues and whatnot. So the committee that I was on, we really tried to run with it. Now, we were limited somewhat with the pandemic, but one of the benefits is we were already meeting virtually. It gave a good overview of Sealaska. I got to meet many of the board members who I know and I believe that I can work with. There's been concern whether I can work with them to actually get anything through, and I actually believe I can, and I'd be willing to work with them where we can find common ground. I think in terms of being a delegate for Tlingit and Haida, I share the same concern that I have for Sealaska. I want to see on the business side, Tlingit and Haida to continue to get tribal citizens, in this case, jobs. And so I've been able to attend in person the tribal assembly this past year. I actually wrote a resolution to develop a STEAM program for Tlingit and Haida because, again, I feel passionate about that. So they've allowed me to meet other tribal citizens, shareholders in other regions, and to share. I really want to see more collaborations between what I guess are the bigger cities, but also the villages. And I've made that clear to the villages. That's why I started to go actually last year. It wasn't because I was thinking about running for the Sealaska board, but it was actually because I was a delegate for Seattle. And I do want to see us to remember that we all need each other and we all have different needs. And so I think, it's allowed me to get a very broad base in a very quick amount of time.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay, we have another Facebook question. You have stated your opinion about dividends for shareholders versus funding for the cultural, language, and educational funding. Would you like to expand on that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I did answer this a little bit in the Sealaska form. I believe that the dividend is important, and in some ways, I would say more important, but it gives the shareholder an opportunity to use the money that they get for whatever they need. Now, we have elders that have certain needs. We have young people that are looking to go to school, and they can utilize some of the programs and also the scholarships. We have people in the middle. We have people that are not, elder yet, because it's 65, that are 60, that are looking and they need those funds. One of the things I was able to work with as an SPC member is trying to identify shareholders that were struggling with the ARPA application when the CARES Act, not the ARPA, the CARES Act, when Sealaska was distributing that. And so I would take some of the names and basically send them up to Sealaska. In doing so, I really saw such a broad base of shareholders that $500 meant a lot to them. And so to me, that having that opportunity. Now, at the same time, I do believe that the programs need to be there. I think tying those in, and I think you get the profits up and tying those programs such as the career development scholarships. But also, I do truly believe that Sealaska needs to continue to invest in like the language, because it's something that we need to maintain, and that is a role where, again, providing funds for that. So again, it's distributing those across the board. I think that Sealaska can work with the tribe and allow the tribes, actually, Tlingit and Haida, to handle certain aspects. And again, stay focused on the business end, but yet be involved. They also have Sealaska Heritage, which actually does really well and raises money. But yes, I will say, because I believe that each shareholder should be able to make a choice in terms of what the dividend, and there's shareholders are at different places. And so I think, maintaining that and making sure that that is available is very important.
Great. Thank you so much. Okay, we have another question here from Victoria Milton. Thank you, Monico. Thank you for your comments on term limits and discretionary votes. Us owners really are being pulled over the coals of those votes they use for discretionary to keep the legendary board of directors on there now. We need to put to a vote again on the ballot.
Yeah, I'll just make a comment towards that, Victoria. I know that resolutions from shareholders have been on the ballot, and they need the supermajority, meaning they need all shareholders, total shareholders that are, and they need basically 51%, my understanding. The resolutions that come from the board, they need the majority of those who vote. So this is why it's very important to have board members to be making those decisions. If the board members actually put something on the ballot, it's likely going to pass if they're supporting it. I mean, depending on how again, the shareholders vote, and it is true that the shareholders will vote, but there is the importance of what is decided to be put on. That's my understanding of it. And so I believe that it's very important, anything that can be done in the boardroom to help give the directions for such things as the discretionary voting.
That's a good point. Thank you. Another question here. You have stated your opinion. Oh, I think we already had this question. This might be a repeat question. Is there another question? Okay, we have another one from Brad here. Sealaska's largest asset is the land. How can Sealaska utilize it better to support local economies? Should carbon credits be used to support villages?
Yeah, that's a good question, Brad. I appreciate that. Let me just reread to make sure I'm addressing largest asset in the land. Yeah, I guess for the carbon credits, I think that, it almost seems like a lot of it's already been spent. I think I know that they've been talking about doing additional ones. I would like to see that they invested that money into building infrastructure. I mean, that's really what it should be. Again, infrastructure being the ability to create the jobs. And then again, this is why I've pointed out that the service area, I believe, is the area where Sealaska has the most. If it can create and build those service areas, and that would, create jobs. They have control over that. The villages, I think, in terms of education, being able to set up tech centers, or at least even just getting the ability to be able to log in to take online classes and whatnot. I can't really speak for what they've already done with the money. I have concerns of locking up the lands. I mean, again, we're landowners. We're going to protect those lands, but we want, locking it in for such long periods of time. You really have to think about how you're going to invest that money to create other opportunities that Sealaska can build on.
Thank you. We have another Facebook comment. Good point about the difference between a shareholder-sponsored resolution versus a board-endorsed resolution. I hear they're now qualified to be a tribe, and all that means I like to hear more on their push to become a tribe. I'm not sure if that's a question or a comment. Do you have a response to that?
Well, I guess they're not the tribe. Sealaska isn't the tribe. They're our native corporation. Again, I was talking to some shareholders, pointing out, information about ANSCA, and so I think that I don't know if I don't believe Sealaska is trying to become the tribe. I think that, but let me just comment. There needs to be that separation. They're not the tribe. The tribe is able, they are a sovereign. We're a sovereign nation, and thus, again, there needs to be that understanding that Sealaska as a native corporation. Again, native corporation, so it makes it unique, but it is for profit and should be looking at those as a corporation.
Agreed. Thank you. Okay, we have another one from Clarice. You are the only candidate who expressed concern about Sealaska investing in companies using trawlers. Do you feel Sealaska is going in the right direction with their investments in European seafood companies?
Thanks, Clarice, for that. I have concerns. I mean, some of the companies, I look at it as almost a passive investment, like if investing in Amazon. They're investing a stake and they can get a certain amount of profits. Now, some of those companies, at least from what I've seen, they're using some great technology to process foods. And I believe if they're looking to bring that technology back, to bring back jobs, my concern is, again, it's overseas. It's not really again, shareholder employment. I don't see shareholders going over. Now they may send a couple interns, and I think that would be a great experience for those interns that get to go. But it's not looking at building, unless, again, they have plans, which I don't know what their plans are, but to bring that back. There was the most recent company that they invested, Normandine, where in their website, they clearly say that they are trawling. And in my understanding, there's, I think there was comments in the Sealaska virtual forum where you can trawl, where you're not wasting anything, and it doesn't. But I've also heard from other, I believe, people that know well that there's no good way to trawl. It will do damage, which kind of goes against ocean health. Again, that's my understanding of it. So it's difficult to see how that coincides. But I guess some of my main concerns that are clear, very clear to me, is it's overseas. I don't, unless that plan is to bring it over. Again, I believe, having good companies, and if they're making money, that's good. But we need to be looking at how we're going to create the jobs for our shareholders, which are, most of them are going to be in the U.S. They're not going to be overseas. There are some overseas. I do know that, having served in the SBC for outside of Alaska. That covered everybody outside of Alaska. That included Canada and several countries in all the 49 states. So
that was a good point. Thank you. So we're going to take one final question here. Again, from Clarice. As a shareholder living outside of Alaska, what is Sealaska doing right with outreach, and where can they improve?
I think that, they had, I'm going to give, some credit to them. They had some outside meetings. They have the Portland. Again, serving as SPC for the chairs for SPC outside, I was watching this very closely over the last few years. And as you come outside of Alaska, the big base in Washington, then you start going down to Oregon and Portland, and then down to California. Then it starts spreading across. I do think that they've had some outreach, and they've had now that we're meeting in person, and they were able to have some meetings. But I think that they need to continue to reach out. I would like them to see, as they have, they highlight some shareholders. I would like to see more in outside of Alaska, because there's a lot of people, and this goes back to having mentors that you can actually see them doing jobs. Now that, again, it's not an emphasis of outside versus inside of Alaska. I mean, we have shareholders, and we have a lot of shareholders in Alaska, and I definitely support reaching out to all of them. So when we're talking about outside, I think that that base is growing. That base is over 51% of the shareholders are outside of Alaska, and that will continue to grow no matter what. It's going to continue to grow because of just where our shareholders and our tribal citizens are moving to. And so it's important to bring them back in, to have that support. Again, talking about the landless, you're going to want that support to be in, but they need to feel included. And if they don't feel included, they're not going to care. And it's basically going to start backfiring in terms of just, there won't be the support. And I would hate to see that. I really want us to see. I would say to people outside of Alaska, they really desire to connect back with the culture because they don't get to see it as much. They may have, some of the better jobs because there might be some jobs that aren't available in Alaska, but they definitely want that. So I think they can continue to build those. And again, I don't think Sea Alaska could go everywhere. And this is where I believe that they can also partner with other organizations, maybe even non-native, but also the tribes and other native corporations. I really think that there's that desire for natives. There's sometimes that we struggle to always understand, or see all aspects. But I think when we start communicating and talking, I really believe that starts happening. So that's what I would do.
Okay, looks like we're doing one more question here from Clarice. But I appreciate your comments on that. As a shareholder who is outside of Alaska, I agree with what you had said. For the final question, Sea Alaska would like to qualify for the same federal funds and programs as federally recognized tribes. It may become a problem when it comes to regulations under NAGPRA, where if changed, Sea Alaska could repatriate sacred items along with tribes. Oh, I guess that's a comment.
Okay.
Okay. So if you have any other questions or you're watching this at a later date, you can ask questions on Facebook, or you can reach out to Monico directly. Can we put his cell number back up? There it is. And a little reminder, you can vote as many times as you want. It is your last vote that counts. You can recast online at myseaalaska.com, and you'll still be eligible for early bird prizes. Vote directed and vote independent. On Saturday, we will host Patrick Anderson, another independent candidate seeking election to the Sea Alaska Board of Directors. And we're streaming from both shareholders of Sea Alaska and Sea Alaska shareholder groups. It's a joint effort to reach as many shareholders as possible. Viewers, Gunischish for joining us this evening, and have a good night.